Monday and you're watching FreightWaves Now. I'm your host Anthony Smith, and coming up, Andrew Cox is going to give us a shipper update. But first, we're going to go to Zach Strickland with the carrier update brought to you by Powerfleet. Stay tuned.
Hey everyone, and welcome to your carrier update on this Monday presented by Powerfleet. I'm Zach Strickland. Hopefully everybody is well rested and ready to go for yet another week. Just to give you a quick update on the volumes, we have eclipsed that 9,300 mark. Just briefly, just barely over the top of 9,300 this week. We actually eclipsed it late last week on Friday, and it dipped back down underneath it for just a hot second, and now it's back up over it slightly. So volumes continue their slow grind, a slow recovery. It would not shock me at all if we saw a little bit of this thing come back down a little bit, flatten out, but we have been seeing this pattern of late week jump in volume. So we're seeing a lot more late week, Wednesday, Thursday increase in volumes. Week over week, that's where the majority of the increase has been over the last couple of weeks. This is a very erratic pattern for the market. We've changed a lot of dynamics in the freight market so far this year, especially out of this corona. You can see this little stair step effect forming after we've increased rapidly at the end of April. We leveled out last week, and now we're back up again, starting to plateau again. So if you guys are seeing a lot more freight tenders on Wednesdays and Thursdays compared to Monday, Tuesday, you are not alone. That's exactly what we're seeing in our data here. Looking at it year over year, you can see we've definitely changed significantly in terms of freight market patterns and volumes, as we have, a little bit of an increase in March. And they were seeing a little bit, a very flat pattern. And again, this time last year, right before, the volumes actually dropped off about 4 to 5% as Trump announced the the tariffs hitting the market. So we did see a lot of volumes decline. So year over year, we should see some better comps upcoming this week. Looking at the tender rejection rate, 2.85%. So I pulled it up here and I zoomed in to kind of show that we are actually seeing a pretty decent jump in tender rejection rate for the nation. We leveled off around 2.6% there for a long time, and now it's a 15-point move, so it's not necessarily going to mean that you're going to see the spot market flooded by any means, but it is significant in the way that we are coming off of the floor in terms of capacity. Rejection rates jumping up at all is actually pretty big news so far. So looking at the country, I'm pulling up the weighted rejection index is a clear indicator of where we're seeing the biggest week over week changes, the most significant week over week changes in capacity, because it values market share as well as the weekly change in tender rejection rate. Again, anywhere from about a -5 to a 5 is relatively normal movement in the weighted rejection index. We do have one, however, that has bumped over that movement in terms of a 5 value of weighted rejections, and that is the Ontario, California market. Ontario, California, of course, the second largest market in the United States, so it doesn't take a lot of tender rejection increase to make this market a big deal in the weighted rejection index. You have Los Angeles sitting right down there under it, Phoenix, Arizona, of all places, sitting down there underneath that. So the top 3 markets in weighted rejection changes week over week, out there on the West Coast, down here, in the desert region of the Southwest. So what does that mean in terms of overall volumes and movement? So here's the Ontario market. The Ontario market, of course, that big DC-centric area out there in California, Southern California, one of the more important markets to watch. Because of that, we had a lot of imports come in April. Year over year, we had some pretty decent increases, about 2 to 3% increase in TEUs in the Los Angeles ports. So it is going to see, we should have a little bit of inventory to move there, and we do think that that's part of the reason that we're seeing these volumes kind of jump up here. I've got the Ontario outbound tender volume index in purple. We see this nice climb. It's slowing down a little bit, but it's still going up, and with it, it's taken a little while to influence those tender rejection rates, which are sitting right around the national average at this point. So again, Ontario seeing a little bit more capacity tightness moving into May. And that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from Powerfleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with Powerfleet.
Welcome to your shipper update. I'm here with Andrew Cox. Andrew, what's the latest?
Anthony, so we got the April non-farm payroll data in on Friday, and this is something that we've been expecting to be bad. It's not surprising that it is this bad, but it's just brutal to see. This is the largest month-over-month loss of jobs dating back to post-World War II, back to 1948. And we can talk about a little bit of some of the industries. I just selected some of the ones that were hit the hardest, and this is we modeled this back a couple months ago. I actually modeled that 50% of unemployment would hit leisure and hospitality. It's at 47% right now. So just these numbers are staggering. The total of 20 million people lost their jobs, and it pushes the unemployment rate up to 14.7%.
Right, Andrew, as you mentioned, a lot of hard-hit industries here. Of course, leisure, hospitality. We're hearing stories all across the country of individuals that are out of work, that are starting looking to work. We're hearing that there are, of course, countries, countries, states, and regions starting to come back online, very piecemeal style. What does this mean for the recovery here?
Well, the recovery is going to be long. It's going to take longer than we think. One thing that stood out to me on this report was that the average hourly earnings jumped 4.7%, one of the largest monthly jumps, and that basically tells me that it was a lot of low-income jobs that were lost. Most of these sectors are low-income, so I think that it's going to. Some of those jobs are not just going to come straight back on, and the furloughed numbers are even worse. If they included the millions of people that have been furloughed but kind of expect their jobs to come back in the next 6 weeks, this number would have pushed over 20%. So it's the highest numbers we've seen since the Great Depression. It's going to take longer than we think. I don't think these people are going to be rushing back to their jobs. Some of the restaurants and things are only at 25 or maybe 50% capacity, so they don't need the full workforce back yet.
And so when we're looking at this, Andrew, as you mentioned, it's not going to be a huge rush for a lot of Americans. And one of the things that we're seeing is that unemployment, of course, that comes with initial jobless claims, and that comes with unemployment benefits. Some of these individuals are indeed making more than they would have if they were in the workforce right now. Do you think this plays a role into people returning to the workforce?
Of course. This is one of the reasons that the government gave so much as an unemployment benefit for those 4 months. They put the $600 per week plus whatever you get from your state. The reason was to keep people in their homes, to keep them out of work, to give them an incentive to not go back to work. While that thing is supposed to expire, I think, in August, that's when we really need to have the discussion then, is that depending on how widespread the coronavirus still is, whether that needs to be extended or not to keep people in their homes. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping by that point those people can return back to work, that will be incentivized return back to work because they'll lose that $600.
Right. And I can only imagine when we're looking at some of these numbers, for example, retail, that the landscape gets completely changed. Do you think there are going to be some industries that are just going to be completely reshaped by this whole event?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of industries. Take us, for example. There's a lot of us that are not going to come back to the office. I think there's many businesses just like us that have realized that they can work from home. They can successfully work from home. Some of that retail trade, people still like to buy clothes in person, but there are some things that being shifted more online. If you look at the Bank of America credit card spending, total spending is down, but retail spending online is up. So I mean, it's taking up a higher percentage of people's money. So there may be things that those jobs never come back.
Right, and then just moving on down the list here, we have manufacturing, of course, one of the hardest hit industries, and we're looking at individuals being able to actually work within an environment that's not in close contact with each other. One of the industries that we do expect to come online first and kind of full force, do you think that this is going to need some kind of prodding or pushing from any kind of incentives here?
Likely so. I mean, on the demand side, we talk about automotive production coming back online, but I mean, is there really going to be that much demand for brand new cars? They're having to rent out parking lots to park these new cars right now. So, I think they're going to have to do something for the demand, like they did back in 2008 to try to get people to buy some more of those durable goods. If we dove into this this manufacturing number, the durable goods manufacturing number was made up a significant portion of this. So, I think people are going to have to really push back for some durable goods.
Excellent. And looking at construction, this was one of the bright spots of the economy, of course, throughout the last half of 2019, getting into 2020. So it's a little bit disheartening to see such a loss here. I know when we look at the most recent housing starts number, it was down, but still slightly up. I think it was just around 1% above the year ago level. So it kind of shows that strength that it was building and that momentum. So it's kind of disheartening to see that kind of come to a halt here, whereas we enter spring, usually the busy season for construction. Do you think this is going to be an area that's going to have some kind of life coming back into it?
See, I would hope so, because I think construction, it's all going to depend on demand now, because I think genuinely that construction can operate in an environment of social distancing. They can stay further away from each other. A lot of them wear masks anyway to protect themselves from the environment they're in. So I would think that construction is a place that could come back on quicker than others, but again, it's all going to depend on demand. And this is another part we've seen. You're going to see less commercial demand for places like this, where we're not going to be coming back to work. So there's going to be long-term effects of this.
Right, Andrew, insightful as always. Where can people find more?
You can go to freightwaves.com/passport to find all of our research. We've got a couple papers coming out soon. Be on the lookout for those. And we've got Great Quarter Guys with Kevin Hill and I, our podcast on at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Excellent. Great Quarter Guys. I love that podcast. Always insightful from you and Kevin Hill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for that update. And thank you so much for tuning in. That's going to do for this Monday edition of FreightWaves Now. But the fun doesn't stop here. As Andrew mentioned, we're always streaming around the clock. So check out all of our content on the FreightWaves TV app on all your favorite streaming platforms, including Apple TV. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.